Hey, I am continuing my bold action advice for rookies today. And today I'm going to talk about something that's really difficult to get a grasp on, but once you have it, you can't really unsee it. It's not like once you've seen it, it's there always. So, it is points for value. So, in all games where you have a point system where you pay points for your models, there is a curve. It doesn't necessarily look like this, but there is a curve where the points that you spend have an increasing effect in the game, and what the curve looks like depends on the rules. Now, for bold action, the curve more or less looks like the blue line on my chart here. It's pretty close to what that is. So, if you pay the least amount of points that you have, then you'll still have a unit that has some effect. It's not good. It's pretty bad, actually. But it can do some things. Like, even the cheapest dirt units that you can take. An officer, inexperienced officer with a pistol, 20 points. He can still be a morale bobble. He can do snap twos. He can take objectives. You can also take like the fifth columnist units from the Armies of Germany book. They can still infiltrate. Yes, they only have pistols. They don't obey any orders. They're like really crap. But they can infiltrate. And they can take objectives. So, in that respect, even the lowest points still gives you some benefit. Now, once you move up in points, you start getting units that are pretty effective, that can do stuff, and that really has an interesting effect in the game, right? And you can increase your spending, getting better and better units. And there are actually some of those units in the middle there that may not be interesting because there are other units that are more effective for a little bit more points, but a lot more effective, right? Because the line, it may be not like a perfect curve, it maybe goes up and down a little bit. But you also can spend so many points that the effect that you get per point is not as great as it was in the start, because the curve starts out being really steep, where a little bit of increase in points gives you much more effect. But once you get to the top end of the spectrum, where you're paying a lot of points, you're not getting a lot of effect, not the same amount of effect anyway. And that is what experienced players means when they talk about points for value, or a unit being a point sink, where you just pour points into that one unit and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's not more effective, right? It's also why a lot of people have been trying to make what I term Death Stars. It's not my term, it's something I have from 40k. It's a pretty old term in wargaming circles for when you have a large, very expensive unit that is very, very effective. And you build your army around that one unit. In bold action, that doesn't really work. And that's because of the rule system of how the order dice mechanic is set up. The pins mechanic, all of that means that it's much more beneficial to have many units than it is to have one very big, very expensive unit. So if you look at the red circle on my chart here, that is what I could sort of say is a Goldilocks zone. This is the zone where the points for value are just right, where it means that the way you buy and stuff for those units, they're just right, so that you get the maximum amount of efficiency out of the minimum amount of points. Because remember, paying less points is better than paying more points, right? You don't want to go up and pay for something that has no effect if you can avoid it. because you only have a limited resource, the points. So the less points is better, but the more effect is better. So we have this Goldilocks zone of where that sort of combines to the best possible effect per point. And some players will happily pour points into one of those units, like buy one unit from that Goldilocks zone, let's say a 5-6 man veteran unit, but then pour more points into it, pushing it further and further up the blue scale until it actually leaves the red zone, because they want the flamethrower and the LMG and the assault rifles and the body armor and the extra officer, all of it just pour in, like 4 Panzerfaust as well into that unit, and then we make them Gebirgsjäger fanatic veterans, whatever. At some point, you're pushing your points so much up that the effect does not match. And that is what makes lists good, what makes experienced players good at building lists, is that they know that they don't overinvest in units, because they have the feeling for where that points for value scale is just right. If you go above it, it's bad. If you go below it, you definitely need a plan. If you want, you can sometimes go below, but you need a plan for how to do that. Otherwise, your units are just pointless and crap, right? They have no effect. So my advice to you rookie players is don't overinvest in your units. Once you get above 140 points-ish, then you really need to think about, is this worth it? For me, this area here is more or less 140 points. It is the upper end of where I invest points. I don't usually go above that for most of my units in most of my armies. And the lower limit is, well, I will happily take 20 point units, simply because at some point they become just an order dice. But there are some units down here that are very cheap, but not very effective. So, for instance, soft skin transports, they have sort of dropped out of my red zone now. Even though they are cheap, they do still deliver something. I find that there is this zone down here where I don't spend the points on soft skin transports anymore. So 140 points for me is the maximum amount of effect I want for my points, or it's the maximum amount of points I want to spend for my effect, rather. But that changes for every single person. It's not the same for every single person, although there is a huge overlap for most competitive players. So it's not that they are like magical beings that can think up impossible combos of stuff for their lists. It's just that they are very, very efficient. That is why their lists are good. They are very points for value efficient. And it is something that with games and with you being able to sit down and build a lot of lists will come to you as well. Or, you can just watch my channel a lot and see me do this. Every single time I do a list review, points for value is what I'm talking about. So that is my advice for you today. Go out and try to become better at points for value, which means don't overinvest. That's it. Cheers.